Hey everybody, my name is Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. Thank you for coming to my workshop today on the Akashic Records. I'm going to talk about the Akashic Records, what they are, where they're located, and also who has accessed them in the ancient past and even today, and how you can access them, okay? So it's going to be an amazing workshop. I want to thank you again for having me on here. And please take a look at my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson. It's an Amazon bestseller and has been now for 17 months straight, okay? So let's dive right into it. In case you don't know who I am Billy Carson. I'm the founder of Forbidden Knowledge on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also forbiddenknowledge.com. I'm also a host, a guest host speaker on Deep Space, on Gaia, on Ancient Civilizations. I'm also on several shows on the Travel Channel, UFOs, The Untold Stories, UFOs, The Lost Evidence. I'm on the Discovery Channel, on American Mystery, and I'm on my own network as Forbidden Knowledge, which I just have my own series of shows, which are called Knowledge for Ascension with Forbidden Knowledge, okay? So thank you again, and we're gonna dive right into it. Let me share my screen here. And we'll begin this presentation. Let's see here. All right, so we're going to start off talking about the Akashic Records. Now, these Akashic Records are really amazing, okay? Because a lot of people have heard about the Book of Life, which has been mentioned, of course, in biblical texts, and other ancient sages saying that there's always an accounting for your deeds and so forth. Well, there's a lot of truth to what was told in those books and in those verbal conversations and handed down history from sages. Because why? Now, all of a sudden, as you're going to find out today, we're discovering that this record field, this field of information that exists all around us, is really here, and that's what we're going to learn about today. Okay, so now, what are the Akashic Records? The Akashic Records are the energetic records of all souls and their past lives, their present lives, and possible future lives as well. Each soul has its Akashic record, like a series of books, and with each book representing one lifetime. The Hall of Records is what is called sometimes, or the library of the Akashic Records, is where all souls' Akashic records are stored energetically. In other words, the information is stored in the Akashic field, also known as the zero-point energy field. You may have heard that mentioned before by great physicists like Nassim Haramein, Michio Kaku, and various others as well, that there's this zero-point energy field that exists all around us. These records are located behind your neck, and the records of your body are directly connected to your chakras and also connected to the Akashic records of your soul, which is located in the Akasha, otherwise known as the fifth dimension. You always hear us talking about getting into 5D consciousness, or getting into 5-dimensional consciousness, or humans are going to move into 5D, or Earth is going into 5D. We're talking about the etherical field that it really exists of energetic electromagnetic waves that contain and store all information of everything that ever existed and everything that will exist. All knowledge of every source in the entire universe from every single sentient being is in that field. The fifth dimension is a dimension of creation and manifestation, the vibrational space of no judgment, fear, density, thought, or ego. While you physically live in the third dimension, when you access the Akashic records of your soul, you are tapping into the fifth dimension. And the reason why we can do this is because the human mind is multidimensional. Your consciousness is multidimensional. So what does that mean? Okay, so in our physical body, we literally are designed to encapsulate a particular tune of the frequency, a particular, like 99.1 on the radio dial, 99.2, 99.3. Your body may be 99.1, I might be 99.2. The frequency that's coming from the mass consciousness has now separated itself into trillions and trillions, or maybe even Googles of entities, of frequencies. And depending on your avatar body frequency, you then pick up that frequency, and it's literally downloaded to your body on a consistent stream, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your brain does not create consciousness, it downloads consciousness. Okay, this is very important to understand. And because consciousness is multidimensional, that means that when you access the information stored in that area, that means your mind has the capability of transcending and going multidimensional as well. So it's incredible because we as physical beings in the third dimension can really access multiple dimensions of planes of existence through conscious thought. The term Akashic Records can be traced back to 1883. It was first mentioned by author Alfred Percy Sinnett. In his book, Esoteric Buddhism, he describes how Eastern philosophy and universal records physically exist in a realm known as the Akasha. This realm can be accessed by enlightened individuals, and the term Akasha is actually a Sanskrit word meaning ether, or you can say aether, depending on how you were taught. So we're talking about entering or accessing the etherical fields. Amazingly, references to the Akashic Records can be found thousands of years earlier in the ancient Hindu scriptures known as the Mahabharata and the Puranas. These scriptures mention an ancient sage known as Narada, and the ancient sages say that Narada transcended consciousness to gather vast knowledge and give wisdom teachings to the people. It is said that Narada had access to a great source of knowledge that is the fabric of divine cosmic order, and Narada had the ability to tap into the universal records known as the Akasha. So we're talking about going way back. We're not, this is information that has been passed down from generation to generation for eons. And Narada is just one of many, many sages that have accessed this vast field of information and knowledge and brought it back to people to help them. Okay, so it's not anything new. Edgar Cayce, if you study Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, this is in modern times. He was able to get into a semi-awake, semi-sleep mind state and access the Akashic Records. And hundreds of people, I think maybe even thousands of people came to him with different illnesses and problems and issues and so forth. And he was able to look at them, read them, and he was able to also then access the Akashic field and gather information to tell them what they needed to cure their disease or illness, to fix their invention, to solve their problems, whatever the case may be. He had this capability, and his prophecies were documented by the thousands, and there's even a library for Edgar Cayce that exists, a modern day library you can walk into to see all of his prophecies and how each one was actually very, very accurate down to the T. So it's really amazing. The Akashic Records of your soul contain all the memories of all experiences acquired in all lifetimes. So sometimes we think that this is our only life that we're existing, but you have to realize that we meaning a lot of us that are now in the conscious and quantum field, and in the quantum mechanics and quantum physics, are now beginning to understand the multiverse and something called superpositions, and how everything exists in superposition of one another, and that the self that I am right now exists on multiple planes of existence in multiple universes on multiple planets at the same time, and all doing totally different things. And that when this energy transfers out of this frequency, it's recycled back into this vast energy field and comes back again on a different tune, slightly different tune, and it's reincarnated again back into this third dimensional universe. And I can come back as another me. I can come back as another gender, another male, female. It doesn't really matter. I can come back, even as maybe not even a human, because atoms all the atoms that are here now were the same atoms that were here since the beginning of time. Okay, so atoms reconfigured themselves into different building blocks of things that exist. Right now, the atoms have reconfigured themselves to create this avatar body in me that I'm calling me, and I'm downloading a stream of consciousness. But these same exact atoms in the future, once this avatar body ceases to operate, will then reconfigure themselves into something else. These atoms could become part of a rock, can become a blade of grass, could become a flower, a tree, could become part of a building, could become part of a computer. You never know. So, but the spirit life, the soul, will then also reattach to something that can absorb or harness the frequency, and I will be back incarnated into whatever that is. So it's really amazing how this universe is set up and how energy really does transform. It can't be destroyed, it can only be transformed. Now, every living being has its own Akashic records, and a group of people has its own Akashic records. Theosophy and Theosophy and Anthroposophy, the Akashic records are a compendium of all human events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent to ever have occurred in the past, present, or future. They are believed by Theosophists to Theosophists, I'm sorry, I keep messing that word up, Theosophists, to be encoded in a non-physical plane of existence known as the etheric plane. This is really important, okay? So basically what they're saying is there's a field of science that's now been created studying this Akashic record field. And what they're beginning to realize is that what the ancients really told us is every single thought that you think, every action that you do, everything that goes on in your life is being recorded. And not only in this life, but in all previous lives, and it's creating this compendium of histories of your frequency of you. And that information can be accessed by the right mind, or maybe in the future, the right type of technology to access it as well. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that scientists all over the world, a lot of these black budget projects are working to access this field if they already have it, by the way. According to Edgar Casey, the Akashic records are the universe's version of what we call a supercomputer. And these records are stored in a multidimensional central storage facility and contain all information. The Akashic records store the past, present, and the future, and all that exists around us at every point in space-time. So around us in space-time, the smallest measurable distance in space-time we call a Planck unit, okay? So these Planck units exist. It's the smallest measurable amount that we have right now of distance. But at every Planck unit exists a zero-point energy field and access to all the information in the Akashic records at every single point around us, all over the place, throughout the entire universe. So no matter where you go, access to this field may be possible. Where are the Akashic records located? Within the Akashic record energy field, there is a specific, uniquely tuned frequency to each human's individual torus field. So if you know, we have a torus energy field that comes out of our body and wraps around us. It extends between 8 to 20 feet, depending on the person and the strength of the field. It really comes out of the heart chakra and moves outward, and it creates a toroidal energy field. Okay, and that toroidal energy field is real. This is something that I learned when I took courses at MIT in applied neuroscience. We were taught this in actual mainstream school and teaching. Now, listen to this. What's interesting about that field is that when you're walking through a room, if somebody in that room is sad, depressed, hurting, whatever, their field is probably picking up on the cortisol that's being transmitted from those stress levels, and it's flowing out in that field. When you walk by that person, if you hang out within their field range too long, that cortisol merges in with your toroidal energy field and then gets pulled in to your body, and then your cortisol levels increase. This is scientifically proven. So when you walk into a room and you say, oh, there's a lot of bad vibes, or I sense that person had bad vibes, that's real. You're really picking up on the cortisol emissions of that person. Now, just the opposite, when a person is happy, excited, exhilarated, and everything else, and they're operating at a high frequency, your energy field picks up on that as well, and that's contagious. The high energy, happiness, excitement, joy, that's also contagious. Now, what's incredible is if you're walking through a room full of people and you're vibrating at an extremely high level and operating and walking in your true power, no matter what level people are at in that room, you can raise their levels. You can actually increase their frequencies to a higher amount by just walking through a room and knowing that you're walking in power and understanding the power of your energetic torus field, okay? Each person is transmitting and receiving information from this field just like a modern-day Wi-Fi network. The scientists did a study and discovered that through this field, you can send and receive information, and the information is pulled directly into the DNA and sent out right from the DNA as well. So DNA can download wireless information, convert it into digital data. They can take digital data, convert it into something that the DNA can understand, and store it. And then also the opposite, it can transmit information back up into the atmosphere, and that information can be then digitized and then collected and then converted from a server back into digital information again. This is really important because understanding that we're sending and receiving information every single day, 24 hours a day. Our bodies are doing this automatically without us even being aware of it. Just like a global Wi-Fi network, it is invisible to the human eye, and we know it exists. The same for the Akashic Record energy field. It exists all around us, and once we access it, we can receive limitless information about anything in the entire universe, okay? So, black holes store information as holograms at the event horizon, says Stephen Hawking. This is important. Now, the event horizon, all black holes have this rim, okay, before you get into them. And at this rim, it glows and it transmits this radiation. And the radiation comes out of it, not into it, which is really interesting. So they used to think that everything that fell into a black hole was completely destroyed. But then they realized energy can't be destroyed, it can only be transformed. And they realized that the event horizon, with this radiation that was existing there, was actually the data collected from things that has fell in. So when something goes into a black hole, the data of that object is stored on the event horizon. So no information is lost. You can actually decode this potentially. So, quantum mechanics dictates that anything that is matter and energy can be broken down into information, strings of ones and zeros, for instance. A consequence of this rule is that information should never disappear, not even if the matter or energy is linked to being sucked into a black hole. Theoretical physicists have come to the conclusion that when something or someone enters a black hole, the information or data about them or the object is stored on the event horizon. This is Stephen Hawking. He recently passed away. What a great, amazing mind, a theoretical physicist. Stephen Hawking says that the information isn't destroyed by a black hole because it never makes it through the other side. Instead, it's trapped at the event horizon. That's the boundary in space-time, which matter and light can only pass inward towards the mass of the black hole. At this boundary layer, the information is stored at a two-dimensional hologram super translation, and a hologram is a 2D description of a 3D object. We're living right now in a fractal holographic universe. That's what we actually are self-immersed in. It doesn't mean that we aren't real. It's just the method of creation of this realm is holographic by nature. As a matter of fact, an atom is 99.999% empty space. And if I were to take the 7.7 billion humans on this planet Earth and remove all the empty space from their individual avatars, all the empty space from the atoms in their avatars, I'd fit every single human being on Earth, all 7.7 billion, into one sugar cube. We're not really even here. This is really all a big illusion. The idea that the super translations are a hologram of the ingoing particles, Hawking explains. Thus, they contain all the information that would otherwise be lost. So all information is stored. Nothing is lost. Even every thought you think is also stored, because every thought creates an electromagnetic wave, and that wave leaves out of your skull and goes into space-time and is stored on the energetic grid we call the ether. Physicist Stephen Hawking says that the information can be stored and can be read. Theoretically, if you could tap into this information, somehow you would be able to reconstruct all the events that caused the matter to plunge into the black hole. Think of a black hole as a super paper shredder. Documents are ripped to pieces and then become unreadable. But if you put all the paper strings back together, it'll make sense. In the 1970s, the same Hawking introduced the concept of Hawking radiation, photons emitted by the black hole itself due to quantum fluctuations. Initially, Hawking thought the photons carried no meaningful information, but before his death, he changed his mind, and this Hawking radiation basically means that all information cannot be destroyed. It escapes the black hole. And actually what he discovered was, Stephen Hawking, was that through Hawking's radiation, which is part of black holes, as it absorbs and sucks things in and creates this huge event horizon and these powerful jet streams that come out of radiation that come out the bottom and the top, that even over millions of years, even black holes radiate away, okay? and information is then transferred elsewhere into the universe and used for other things, or just stays on the energetic grid for access capabilities by some advanced mind or some type of advanced computer system later. Now, we can't see Wi-Fi networks. We can't see the Akashic records. Why is this? Visible light. Everything in this entire universe exists as an electromagnetic wave, light waves, everything. The computer or the mobile device or the TV that you're looking at now to watch me talk about this workshop, even all of that equipment is made of light, okay? All things that are solid, all they are slowed down light, or sometimes we call it frozen light. They're electromagnetic waves that have been tuned to a different frequency to give us the illusion of separation and solidity. Now, why can't we see these light waves except for the ones coming from the sun, RGB, red, blue, green? Well, the reason why is because the human eye is only set and tuned to see 1% of the light spectrum. The electromagnetic waves your eyes detect, which is called visible light, oscillate between 400 and 790 terahertz. That's several hundred trillion times a second. The wavelengths are roughly the size of a large virus, between 390 to 750 nanometers. 1 nanometer equals 1 billionth of a meter, and a meter is about 39 inches long. So this tells you how tiny our visual ability is. It's very small. Our brain interprets the various wavelengths of light as different colors. Red has the longest wavelength and violet has the shortest. When we pass sunlight through a prism, we see that it actually is composed of many wavelengths of light. The prism creates a rainbow by redirecting each wavelength out of a slightly different angle. So our full color spectrum are the colors of the rainbow. That's all we can see. But there's so much more that exists there, and we'll go into that. So we can't see in gamma rays. If you could see gamma rays, you'd see all kind of crazy things happening around you right now that you wouldn't believe. Like, wow, I can't believe I'm looking at this. X-rays, we can't see an X-ray. X-ray, again, is another frequency of light that we have no ability to see unless we use technology. Ultraviolet light, we can't see. A lot of insects and some birds can see in ultraviolet light. Gives them another ability and advantage over us. As a matter of fact, it's been said that some of these UFOs that have been seen that seem to just pop in and out of existence, what actually is happening is they're cloaking themselves in ultraviolet. And the ultraviolet spectrum, they can't be seen. So from our perspective, it appears that they popped in and out of existence, but in true reality, they may just be cloaking themselves with ultraviolet light. And what adds credence to this is when you go into the NASA archives and look at some of the footage from the space station, you discover that they used to film live footage streaming on a channel every single day. And all these UFOs would pop up. They would switch the camera from multi-spectrum back to just regular camera mode and they would disappear. They realized that in multi-spectrum mode, that we and everybody else could see all the other things moving around in the background in space that we shouldn't be able to see. They didn't want us to see that. So they started going back to the regular camera. They would probably use a second camera for multi-spectrum for their own research purposes to figure out what the heck is going on and what those things are up there. But it's been so well documented and so many recordings have been copied and published, you can't get away from it now. There are things up there that are moving around intelligently and intelligently designed that are in the ultraviolet spectrum. Just really amazing. We can't see infrared unless we use technology. Radar waves, we have to use technology. Microwaves, that's what your cell phone operates on. It operates on microwaves. Thank goodness we can't see all this stuff with the naked eye. We'd be so confused and we'd have so much input coming in, it'd be hard to navigate through this matrix. And of course, television waves and radio waves, which are emitted. Now, our mind produces electromagnetic waves extremely similar to radio waves. So just like 1960s I Love Lucy episodes that were transmitted way back then are still flying through space right now, permanently. Every thought that you think since you became able to make thoughts exists in space-time and is not going to ever disappear. It's there permanently. That's the book of life that has been talked about in biblical texts and by sages for eons, literally. And the reason why we know this is real science, is because we can put a sensitive cap on your head that has electrodes that pick up the frequencies that are leaving your mind. And a scientist can tell you to think about this or look at this. And then those electromagnetic waves transmitted by your brain are sent out of the skull. This thing captures them and transmits it to a computer. And this is how we know what you're thinking, what part of the mind is working, what parts of the brain are lighting up when you think about this or think about that or see this or see that. It's because your thoughts leave your head. They leave out. They go out into space-time. And once they go out, they never stop. They permeate the grid and they travel through for eternity. So everything you've ever done is stored on this energetic grid and it can't be erased. This is the Akashic record field. That is the book of life. It's real, scientifically real, not just guesswork or conspiracy. It's actually there, scientifically proven. Also, we have in our brain crystal magnetite. Some of you may have heard me talk about this before. Crystal magnetite is here mostly in the back or the bottom of the brain. There's billions of crystals inside your head that work along with the electrons that are conscious in your brain. You have your own consciousness, but don't forget, every electron itself individually is conscious and is a receiver of information. So you have electrons receiving and sending information, and you have the magnetite crystals working together with them. And we know crystals send and receive information because crystal sets were the first radios. Crystal granite used in all these ancient megalithic structures where these kings and these quote unquote gods would hear voices coming out of stone because they were using the technology to broadcast through stone using crystal technology, turning them into speakers. So we know that crystal magnetite is a transmitter and receiver of information, and also used for navigating magnetic fields, because animals like turtles navigate the seas using magnetite crystals in their brain. They can find out where to go back to the original shores of where they hatched to lay their new eggs. Birds can flock north to south and south to north, using the Earth's magnetic field to navigate. And human beings have the same capability as well, using the crystal magnetite in our brain to sense magnetic fields. We put a human being inside of a science facility and put a gigantic magnet over his head, and we moved it around. And by putting a cap on to detect the brain activity, we discovered that the magnetite in our brains is fully active and can detect magnetic fields. So what happened? We have lost our capability, most of us, to discern these natural abilities that we all have, okay? We all have it. We just have not been, we've been tuned out from it, so to speak, but it's still there and it still works very, very well. So you have your pineal gland, your magnetite crystals, and you have the electrons in your mind, along with your correlates of consciousness, which are 3 giant neurons wrapped around the inside of the skull, all working together to send and transmit and entangle with information all throughout the entire universe. And we're just not aware that it's happening and that we have access to these levels. We have to learn how to tap into that. Where did this stuff originate from? Well, one of the oldest sages that we could talk about from literally tens of thousands of years ago, Thoth, T-H-O-T-H, the Atlantean. I wrote a book about him, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson, okay? Thoth was a very important super ancient Atlantean named Thoth. He's also known as Hermes. He accessed the Akashic Records thousands of years before he was revered as a god. Thoth was the first great Kemetic philosopher and founder of ancient mystery schools. Later, he coined the Egyptian mystery school because initially it was the Kemetic schools, and much later when Greece took over Egypt and they changed the name to Egypto, then much later it became Egypt. And now it's the Egyptian mystery schools, but originally it's the Kemetic mystery schools. That's the original terminology for these mysteries. But we're going to go with Egyptian mystery school for now, a more common term that's used today. Thoth would receive his wisdom while in a meditative trance where he claimed to access higher planes of existence. And Thoth used this method to author over 40 books, including the Emerald Tablets, the Emerald Tablets, the Book of Thoth, and the Divine Pymander. 3 books that I highly recommend that you read, okay? Incredible works of art, literally. And there's over 40 that he's authored. Incredible stuff. Matter of fact, the book that I wrote is a complete compendium of the Emerald Tablets. And I break it down in a way that the average person can understand. That's why it's called Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, a Beginner's Guide, okay? To the Egyptians, his knowledge was so vast that they claimed he was the bringer of knowledge to mankind. Much later, after Thoth left ancient Egypt, the pyramid priests deified him and inducted Thoth into the pantheon of the gods. Thoth was interesting in that he never claimed he was a god. It was the people, the humans, that always deified him and claimed he was a god. But him, himself, he never claimed, I'm God, bow and worship me. He was always just bringing knowledge and wisdom and understanding to people. And because his knowledge was so vast, they believed he was a god. Anytime a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization, in most cases, that less advanced civilization becomes a cargo cult or begins to worship the highly advanced entities. Okay, that's just the way it works for some strange reason. And I believe that's true all throughout the entire universe. So I cover this topic in my best-selling book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. I really go deep into this topic, and I talk about the wisdom of Thoth, how he brought knowledge to the people, how he sent his crew worldwide to bring knowledge to people, and also how he got into these meditative states and how he would literally travel the universe in these states and gather information, okay? Nikola Tesla made a very famous quote that was so strong because he really did truly believe in the Akashic Records. He believed that field existed. He said, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the decades of previous centuries of existence. Okay, let me read that again. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. That's Nikola Tesla. So he really understood that there's something unseen going on. And with this unseen realm, it was an energetic realm that carried information, knowledge, and wisdom. And he knew it existed because he tapped into it. Okay, he tapped into it. And he knew that once we begin to explore that realm, we're going to become, we may become masters of creating, manifesting energies and life itself, is one of the statements he also made. So that's really interesting. He understood that. Nobel Prize nominee Dr. Erwin Laszlo studied electromagnetic fields for decades. After years of research, Dr. Laszlo announced that he had found evidence of the Akashic field, and Dr. Laszlo used results from the quantum zero-point energy, the zero-point energy field that emits radiation that we can detect with very sensitive equipment, and it was first discovered by Albert Einstein. We now know that the zero-point energy field exists and that it carries a lot of information about the universe and everything inside of it. So we have doctors, we have scientists, theoretical physicists, all saying the same thing. Dr. Laszlo proposed that the Akasha contains intellectual information. And according to the theoretical physicist, the zero-point energy field, one second, guys. Hold on one quick second for me. Just had to get some water real quick. Okay, let me get back in here. Dr. Laszlo proposed that the Akasha contains intellectual information. According to the theoretical physicist, the zero-point energy field is a all-pervasive sea of quantum energy waves that exist throughout the universe. The fabric of space-time itself is made of energy and information. This information propagates through the universe via waves, and also it's known as the quantum wave. The Akasha is made up of quantum waves that is common to all intelligent life, and this means that all species of sentient life, including all alien life, have the ability to tap into this all-encompassing field of knowledge and information. We all have the ability to tap in and access this field of knowledge and information because of our consciousness and the way that we're wired and the way that we're set up. And it's not just human beings from Earth, it's all beings throughout the entire universe. And all information from all beings in the entire universe is all recorded in this Akashic energy field. Richard Feynman addressed the quantum entanglement theory, where he stated that subatomic particles at any distance can become entangled and send information to each other simultaneously. The human brain is full of electrical activity that creates radiation. This radiation can be detected by a sensitive radio receiver, and other minds anywhere in the universe would be able to send these same exact waves. Like I told you before, guys, our brains are sending waves and frequencies out into space-time. The waves in our brain are extremely similar to radio waves and how they move and operate and how they propagate through space-time. As a matter of fact, they're so similar, you probably wouldn't be able to detect the difference between two. If I put up two scales with cosine waves on them, very, very similar. What's interesting is that our mind is transmitting this information outwardly all the time. So sometimes you may think you got a great idea. You may have just downloaded the idea from someone else who came up with the idea and you pulled it in, or you may have transmitted that information and somebody else in the future or even in the past might be able to download it as well, because mind is outside of space and time. That's what's so interesting about all this. So other minds anywhere in the universe would also be able to send and receive these same waves. Feynman discovered that in our brain, even an electron can be receiving radio signals from the past and the future. This means that every electron in our brain is actually a receiver. So I think every electron in our brain is a receiver. This is incredible. Now, another thing you have to understand, every electron is also conscious. And how do we know this? Not a conspiracy theory, the double slit experiment, where we actually send tiny particles through a slit, and we looked at how it appeared on the back wall inside this tiny microscopic box, and we discovered that these electrons, for example, were making a decision to be waves or become particles based on conscious observation. So when we would look at them, they would become digitized bits. When we didn't look, they were waves of possibilities or probabilities. So everything exists as waves first, and then converts themselves into digitized information or solidity based off of conscious intervention. This is really incredible. So that tells us that consciousness has a very important role and key role in playing in setting up what we consider to be our reality. Other than consciousness intervening with things, everything just exists as waves, frequencies of probabilities. So everything is already here as waves. So when you're not looking at something, it exists as a wave of possibilities. And then when you finally do look at it, your consciousness takes that frequency of wave and collapses it into a solid object that you can perceive as your house, your car, your keys, whatever, your computer, your cell phone. But everything exists as waves. And in quantum physics, this is called wave-particle duality. And matter of fact, not too long ago, we finally were able to take, on physics.org, I saw an article where we finally were able to take a picture of a wave as it converted to a particle, as it decided to go from wave to digital. We caught that in-between moment where that conversion, that morphing was happening. And we now know scientifically it's a fact that all things exist as waves first and then are turned into solid objects later. That's real science, guys. Nikola Tesla knew about this extensively, like I said before. He said, my brain is only a receiver. And we just said that theoretical physicist and quantum physicist Feynman said that electrons in the brain are receivers. Nikola Tesla said this back in late 1800s. My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge. He knew the Akashic Records exist and that we obtain knowledge from this source. Strength and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. In other words, he's tapping into it, but he can't really explain how anybody else, how the average person can just go and tap into it. He was able to. Nikola Tesla was so tapped into this field that he would come up with all his inventions in his mind. Not only would he come up with the inventions, he would download them from space-time or from this field. Then he would ask questions on how to perfect it, and he would get those answers. Then he would build this invention in his mind, piece by piece. Then he would run it, actually turn it on and play it and see if it worked. And if it worked, great. If it didn't work, he would find out what was wrong with it. He would fix it all in his mind. And then when he had a working invention, then he would then put it on paper and work it out into engineering and get it to turn into a three-dimensional object. That's how tapped in Nikola Tesla was. Absolutely incredible. Many ancient sages and teachers have accessed the Akashic Records. But we also know that we have modern day accounts of people accessing this source of unlimited knowledge. In 1923, a 12-year-old Bulgarian girl named Vanagalia Pandeva Gustarova, commonly known as Baba Vanga, was a blind Bulgarian mystic, clairvoyant, and herbalist who spent most of her life in the Rupite area of Kozur Mountains in Bulgaria. Zeni Kadonova claimed in 1977 that millions of people believed she possessed paranormal abilities. As a child, she was playing in the field when a tornado swept her away. The storm carried her away, and her parents found her barely alive with her eyes covered in sand and dust. She was unable to open them, and after 3 unsuccessful operations, she remained completely blind. Gradually, Vangalia developed the ability to see the future, and she began making verified revelations for the local population. By the 1980s, the blind prophet, also known as Baba Vanga, which means blind prophet, had given thousands of verified predictions, and she gained a reputation as the Nostradamus of the Balkans. So she became extremely famous for her predictions. This was a little girl that literally was swept away by a tornado. During that process, something happened. Most likely, she probably hit her head and activated some part of the brain that wasn't working before, or wasn't, not that it wasn't working, but wasn't operating as strong as it was until after that incident. And because she had lost her sight, it probably developed even more. She said when she looked at a person that she could see their entire life. She could see everything about them from birth to death as if she was watching a movie. And many Bulgarian Soviet scientists studied her. They started scientifically testing her and interviewing her and the people that she read. Some of the most prominent politicians of the Eastern Bloc traveled to her village just to receive her readings. Her predictions were extremely accurate, and this tells us that the ability to retrieve information beyond this earth plane has nothing to do with our 5 senses. When she became blind, her hidden abilities developed to receive information about the past, present, and future, and she predicted the day of Stalin's death, for which she was actually arrested and spent a short time in prison. Okay, they actually took her and locked her up for this prediction because they believed that she must have had something to do with it, because it's almost impossible for the average person to to tap into this field and realize what's to come, and also then to be so specific about what's to come. A lot of the times we do get premonitions from the future, or we get this sensation that something's getting ready to happen, but we aren't able to be very, very specific about it as she was, okay? She predicted 9/11. She also predicted the nuclear explosion in Chernobyl in 2004. She also predicted the Indian Ocean tsunami, the sinking of the Russian submarine Kursk, and many other world-changing events. So her predictions were extremely specific. It named places, it named times, it named dates. And this information she was tapping into was coming straight out of the Akashic record field, which has all information from the past, present, and future all at once. And how is that possible? Because remember, we said in the beginning, it's for 5th dimensional content. So anything above the 3rd dimension, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th through the 11th dimension, you're able to see the past, present, and future occurring at once. Because in the 3rd dimension, we have this illusion of time to give us an arrow, to point us in a direction, to take away confusion so that we can operate and maneuver through this 3D matrix. From higher dimensions, that arrow is not needed anymore, and you can see everything that's occurring simultaneously, okay? Throughout the centuries, there have been oracles and prophets that claim to be in contact with these beings and information from otherworldly realms as a source of their advanced knowledge. Michael de Nostradamus was able to access these records and make amazing predictions. Now, this guy, Nostradamus, was really amazing to me because his predictions are really spot on. And I remember that I was on this show on Discovery Channel in 2012 called Countdown to Apocalypse. And the episode I was on was Nostradamus, which was great for me because I'm a Nostradamus fan. And the reason why I was on that show is because I had built an underground shelter based off of research that I had done on solar flares, coronal mass ejections, economic collapses, and other potential geological disasters, I felt the need to build an underground shelter. So I built this underground shelter called Fort Terra Nova. That's about the size of 3 football fields underground. And it can save the lives of 360 people in case of any kind of a disaster. Well, that's how I got on that show, the episode Nostradamus. Just a real interesting thing, because he had predicted a lot of these events that I had, without knowing about it, decided to build underground shelter after researching and finding these things existed. Much later, I learned of his predictions talking about these same exact events that potentially will occur in the future. And because his prophecies have been so incredible, I'm so glad I did it, because what he said is going to happen, most likely is going to happen. It's pretty interesting stuff. He predicted the Great Fire in London in 1966, the French Revolution, the rise of Hitler to power. I mean, just amazing stuff. Nostradamus claimed that he had used ancient methods found on Greek records that showed him how to tap into this vast field of knowledge. Greek records, very important, because the Greeks went to where? They went to Africa. Where it's in Africa? Egypt is in Africa, or the land of Chem. That's where it began. They learned this information from the ancient Kemetic people, which much later they called Egyptians, okay? And they then wrote down this knowledge, a lot of these ancient teachers and mystery school adepts. And Nostradamus got his hands on some of this documentation from some of these adept initiates and some of these ancient mysteries, and he taught himself how to tap into the Akashic record field using information that was written down, okay? Nostradamus claimed that he used ancient methods found on Greek records that showed him how to tap into this vast field of knowledge. He tries to explain it. He tries to explain how the right meditative minds, and in the right meditative mind state, he could see everything unfolding, past, present, and future. So he tries to explain in the right meditative mind state how he could see everything unfolding, past, present, and future. Most prophets believe that they are tapping into a reality beyond this earthly existence. Just like Tesla, Albert Einstein said he was accessing information from another plane of existence. He said that all his biggest theories were given to him from an outside source, okay? Albert Einstein said this. Einstein claims he came up with the theory of relativity in an instant. He said the idea came into his mind out of nowhere. Now, Albert Einstein also did something called these guided dreams or guided meditations, where he would take himself into a semi-awake, semi-sleep state, and he would do these mind experiments, or thought, we call them thought experiments. And through this thought experiment process, he was able to access the Akashic records, and he literally wrote these theories down, which became some groundbreaking theories that literally control the most of our science today. So it's a real field that really exists, that real people have tapped into, and it's there for all of us. We just have to get into the right meditative mind state and be able to access it. Now, what's interesting here is how people from different parts of the world can come up with the same information at the same exact time. Again, proving the existence of this field of energy that transmits information. If you're on the right frequency to download information and then be able to discern it and act on it, you can be one of the recipients of knowledge. And we all are from time to time throughout our lives. We receive information. Sometimes we think we have this great original idea, when in actuality, it was downloaded to us. Two Columbia University sociologists, William Ogburn and Dorothy Thomas, published a paper in the Academy of Political Science journal entitled, "Are Inventions Inevitable?" And in it, they recorded 148 instances of simultaneous inventions where two or more individuals, each operating without knowledge of each other's work, came up with the same groundbreaking innovation and theory or invention at the same time. Think about that. People in different parts of the world, in different countries, different genders, different ages, getting the same exact information at the same exact time and coming up with the same theories, inventions, and concepts and everything else. This is because we're getting downloads. So when you hear people out there talking about they're getting a download or they download information, don't laugh at them. It's real, because you are too. You just may not be aware of it. Einstein's discovery of relativity was almost simultaneously discovered by a French theoretical physicist named Poincare. As time passes, knowledge in the form of electromagnetic waves are being released into the collective fields we now know as the Akashic Records. So as information is downloaded to people, and then people are then thinking about those downloads and using them, their information is being sent back out into the universe as well. There's this complete cycle or loop of information coming in and out, in and out, in and out of this etherical field. And all information, everything that needs to be known, every question you want answered is already here. Every invention already exists in the etherical plane, in the Akashic record field. All information is there. Everything you ever want to know exists in that 5-dimensional plane of energetic information called the Akasha. So that wraps up our workshop for today. I think I've given you guys enough information to go and look up the Akashic Records, to find out, what they're about, where they came from, to just back up what I told you about the Akashic Records. In a future episode, I'm going to come back on here, and I want to thank Neil Gar for this, and I'm going to talk about methods and techniques. We're going to spend the whole time, instead of talking about them and proving that it's real, we're going to talk about how to access the Akashic Records next time. And we're going to go into different meditative states, and we're going to do thought experiments like Einstein did. And we're going to try to create a measurable experiment where we actually try to access the Akashic Records and write down information that we download from the field. And then we're going to present that, and some of the people that participate in that information will be incorporated into the actual presentation or workshop as well. All right. Thanks again. I really appreciate you guys. My name is Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. Please visit forbiddenknowledge.com with the number 4. Thanks again. I appreciate every single one of you.